Support for this podcast comes from the law firm of Davis Malm. Whether you're a developer, property owner, manager, or commercial tenant, their real estate attorneys know the lay of the land, not just the law. Learn more at davismalm.com.
WBUR Podcasts, Boston.
I'm Daryl C. Murphy, and you're listening to The Common. WBUR Cognoscenti senior editor Cloe Axelson. Welcome back to The Common after like a year.
Thanks for having me, Daryl. It's good to be back.
Thank you so much for coming back. We have to work on getting you in here more. But Chloe, you're here because it is our annual Cog Wrapped episode. Now, before we get into this, just remind folks, what is Cognoscenti?
Sure. Cognoscenti is WBUR's Ideas and Opinion page. And this year we published something like 260 pieces, and we've got something like 1,400 authors who've worked with us over the years. So we have a wide diversity of perspectives.
Wow. And for even more clarity, this is different from the editorial stuff that WBUR does, from the newsroom.
Yeah, COG is definitely separate from the newsroom, so we have our own editorial purview. We're making decisions about the pieces that we publish and the authors that we work with. Most of our pieces have a personal take on something on an issue that's moving through the news. So if you look back at the work that we've published over the course of a year, it will very much reflect what's happened in news in the year, but with a personal take.
Okay, now I understand today we're going to be talking about some essays you picked for us that cover 3 themes. And these themes resonated with the COG community this year.
Yes.
Where you want to start off?
I think we should start off with the big, glorious pop culture moment.
Yes, let's do it.
Okay.
Which one are you talking about? There have been so many in 2023.
So I want to talk about 3 women who captured our imagination this year.
Okay.
And that is Taylor Swift,
Yes.
Beyonce,
Yes.
and Barbie.
Absolutely.
I think we should talk about Barbie first.
Let's get into it.
Okay. So Barbie was a movie. Greta Gerwig co-wrote and co-directed. It was an international sensation. Our contributor, Alicia Abbott, provided the perfect summation, I think, of what the key tension in the film is. She writes, the emotional conflict of the film lies in the challenge of reconciling what we imagined for ourselves as kids, great outfits, and nonstop dance parties, with the lives we actually live as adults. And that notion of wrestling with identity was also at the heart of Sarah Shukla's piece. And she described in her essay seeing the movie with a friend. They saw it at a drive-in movie theater on the Cape. And it reminded her that there are toys that see us through the stages of life.
Yeah.
And then there are friends. We have a little bit of her essay, actually.
I'm an adult with a job and a robust collection of Birkenstocks, but I still feel like a teenager sometimes. I'm still carrying around multiple timelines of myself, thinking, isn't this all supposed to make some sort of sense by now? I think Greta Gerwig understands that idea at a molecular level.
That's heavy. I mean, Barbie is deep.
Barbie is deep.
You know, culturally, everything through the decades. The Barbie movie, yeah, of course it would be, one of the biggest movies of all time.
And I think it meant different things to different people.
Yeah.
So for someone like me, I'm a mom. I grew up with Barbie. I'm dealing with midlife stuff. Seeing the movie was a really different experience for me than it was for my kids who are 10.
Yeah. Now, also along that same lane and to this idea of toys and people who get you through different stages of life, we can't forget the musicians.
No, Taylor Swift and Beyonce. What both of them were able to do this year was bring people together, build community, and let people let loose after 3 years of pandemic, fear, and isolation, and just be together and listen to music and just enjoy themselves in a collective setting. It was awesome.
Yeah, I think that's what was fueling this need to not only go to a concert, but get dressed up. It was really cool to see folks just having fun and to dive into this experience.
Exactly. I mean, we had a couple pieces. So the first was by Juanita Tolliver, and she wrote about going to Beyonce's Renaissance Tour concert in Maryland in August. And she talked about this feeling of safety and acceptance and joy and community that was just present from the minute she walked into the stadium.
I mean, it was a huge moment for the queer community.
Huge
for the
moment.
Black queer community. It was
huge moment. It was beautiful. And I think it was a special moment for her, for sure.
Yeah.
And then we also had a piece on the radio by Joanna Weiss, who's a regular contributor of ours, about going to see the Taylor Swift concert with her daughter and her daughter's friends. And that, too, was something amazing, like a real moment in time where she experienced the joy of this concert, but also the joy that her daughter was experiencing at the same time.
Yeah.
But sort of in parallel.
Yeah.
And here's a little bit from her essay.
We made the best of our nosebleed seats, 3 rows from the top, behind the stage, as we watched other people's kids in states of bliss. We marveled at how so many of them knew every syllable of every song, from Cruel Summer to You Belong With Me, and sang them all with Taylor, like an echo.
She said that for many kids at this concert, it was like hearing the soundtrack of their childhoods.
Mm-hmm.
And so in reliving their childhoods through the music, it was a memory they'll have forever.
We're going to take a quick break, but we'll be right back.
Politics has never been stranger or more online, which is why the politics team at Wired is making a new show, Wired Politics Lab. It's all about how to navigate the endless stream of news and information and what to look out for. Each week on the show, we'll dig into far-right platforms, AI chatbots, influencer campaigns, and so much more. Wired Politics Lab launches Thursday, April 11th. Follow the show wherever you get your podcasts.
And we're back with more from Chloe. All right, Chloe, we just talked about pop culture. What else you got for us?
We're going to talk about climate change, which is much less fun, I hate to say.
Yeah.
But
necessary.
But necessary and increasingly central, really, to our coverage at Cognoscenti.
Yep.
As the effects of the warming planet are becoming more serious and just more obvious. It's something that we talk about a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So one of our runaway hits this year was a piece by our colleague, WBUR's environmental correspondent, Barbara Moran. There we go. There we go. So climate stuff can get real wonky, as you know, but Barb has a really great ability to be very funny and make all this stuff much more accessible to regular people.
Mm-hmm.
There was one number that was really central to Barb's piece, and that was 1.5 degrees Celsius. And basically, once the planet warms that much, we get into big trouble. So we have to do everything we can to prevent eclipsing that line.
Right.
But the United Nations released a big report earlier this year suggesting that we would go over 1.5 degrees faster than most people anticipated. But almost nobody was talking about it. And that was very unsettling to Barb.
Yeah.
And here's how she put it in her piece.
But after the report came out, something weird happened. Most climate scientists and journalists didn't change their tune. They were still saying we could avoid hitting 1.5. They kept saying things like, we need to act now, or it's getting harder, but still technically possible. Technically possible? Like if aliens appear with magic tools that fix climate change? I felt like I was being gaslit.
I listened to this piece, and I just feel like it should be required listening for journalists, you know, especially like students right now. It is a really good reminder of what our purpose is, especially in tough times.
I think that's true. I mean, what Barb is basically saying is that climate scientists and many climate journalists are telling themselves a story to stave off despair for themselves and for us. But Barb says that's not a good idea. And
Right.
we should give people an opportunity to understand the truth because maybe then they can actually do something about it.
Yeah.
And she ends the essay talking about her son which I think makes the whole thing feel even more human, which is essential, I think, in any sort of climate reporting.
If my son and his friends think the coral reefs will be okay, the reefs are doomed. If he knows the truth, maybe he'll become a biologist who tries to save them. When people know what they're up against, a lot of them will be sad. I'm sad. But I think many will rise to the occasion and take action. And I think that's the only way we'll make it.
Have you seen the tone change in pieces about climate change for Cognoscenti?
I think so, yeah. So I've been at WBUR now for about 6 years, and I would say early on, climate was relegated to a certain lane, mostly occupied by environmentalists and scientists. And I think now we're seeing many more voices on the topic because climate change isn't just about the science.
Yeah.
I think increasingly it will become a narrative in almost every story that we tell.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to our next theme.
We've reached our final destination, politics.
Here we go. What are we talking about?
So one of the biggest stories this year was no doubt the indictments of former President Donald Trump.
Yeah.
He's facing 91 felony counts, 4 separate indictments. But barring something unforeseen, I think he appears to be running away with the Republican nomination for president.
Yeah.
So there has been so much reporting on these indictments. But I thought Cog had a really interesting piece that was sort of different from the others. And it was an essay by a woman named Jane Rosenzweig, who's the director of the Harvard College Writing Center. And Jane's piece didn't focus so much on the political ramifications of the indictment, but more on what the indictment could teach us about good writing. And in her opinion, special counsel Jack Smith's first indictment of Trump, that was the classified documents case, was a surprisingly compelling read, which is not something you often hear about court documents.
Right.
We've published lots of other pieces on Trump this year, but I thought it was such an interesting angle, and it really resonated with people.
Oh, yeah. I mean, effective writing is always useful. Now, Chloe, I do want to switch gears as we come to a close and address the elephant in the room, right? That being the conflict between Israel and Hamas. That lingers in the background, right, of everything we're talking about here.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering how you're thinking about this going into next year, 2024.
So we have paid close attention to the conflict since the attacks of October 7th. And we've taken great care, I think, to publish perspectives that add to the conversation in a productive way and don't inflame an already very deeply fraught and tragic situation.
Mm-hmm.
The essay that keeps returning to me is a piece by Leah Hager Cohen. Mm-hmm. And Leah is a novelist, and she's also a professor at Holy Cross. And her piece revolves around the concept of midrashim, or commentary, which is something people of the Jewish faith often study alongside the Torah.
Mm-hmm.
And midrash are basically stories about stories. And Leah, in her piece, writes about how important interpretation is. And she says that the real-time midrashim we're experiencing now in Gaza can put wildly disparate interpretations against one another. And she writes that, and I'm quoting here, "Fury born of moral certitude and of the conviction that anyone offering a different interpretation from ours must be blind or monstrous or both." And that phrase, the fury born of moral certitude, is something I'll be holding on tightly as we walk into the year ahead, where I think we have no sense of what is coming at us.
Mm-hmm. Hearing that phrase, the fury of moral certitude, it's making me think, keep your eyes clear, keep your mind sharp, keep your heart open.
I don't know that I could say it any better, honestly. And I think every year brings something unexpected.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what's always true is that there are things that are light and there are things that are dark and heavy. And our ability to metabolize both at the same time is essential. So that's what we're going to try to do.
Well, with that, Chloe, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so very much for coming through to The Common and talking with us.
Thanks, Daryl. Happy New Year.
That's WBUR Cognoscenti Senior Editor Cloe Axelson. And that's our show for today. Thank you so much for listening to The Common. Let us know what your favorite 2023 Cognoscenti piece is. Hit us up on Instagram at WBUR The Common, or send us an email at thecommon@wbur.org. I'm Daryl C. Murphy, and I will talk to you tomorrow.